Jonathan James was one of those rare individuals who were called a boy genius. He was only 14 years old when he gained access to a computer system at NASA, and this wasn't some basic level either. It was top-secret restricted data. He was able to get away with this for months before he was finally caught. What made him do such a thing? What is the story behind the boy genius who stole classified information from NASA? The first thing that you might think of when you hear the phrase boy genius is someone like Michael Scofield from Prison Break, or maybe even Bill Gates. However, in reality, a boy genius is not just someone with a high IQ. They are also incredibly creative and can come up with innovative ideas that most people wouldn't even think of. You can think of someone like Joseph Nicolo, who was inventing complex machines at a time when there were no YouTube videos explaining how to do so. Or maybe Albert Einstein, who came up with the theory of relativity long before he was an adult. Boy, geniuses aren't necessarily socially awkward either. In fact, some of them become very famous, such as Stephen Hawking, David Copperfield, and Christopher Langan. However, there have also been many cases of boy geniuses getting into serious trouble because of their curiosity. Take Gary McKinnon, for example. This British computer expert once hacked into NASA's computer system and stole over 300 passwords. He was only trying to look for aliens, but he ended up being charged with one of the most severe computer crimes ever committed. There's also the case of Aaron Swartz, who once stole 4.8 terabytes of data from MIT's computer network. He did this because he believed that knowledge should be free, but he ended up facing decades in prison for his actions. Then we have Jeremy Hammond, who hacked into the computer system of Stratfor, a private intelligence company, and leaked thousands of emails and account details. He did this because he wanted to expose the company's alleged unethical activities. But he ended up being sentenced to 10 years in prison. Jonathan James was a boy genius who got into trouble for stealing classified information from NASA. His story started in January 2002, when he managed to hack into the computer network of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is part of Caltech and works closely with NASA. He used his knowledge of computers to bypass the security systems and gain access to confidential data related to the Mars rover. He then transferred this data to his home computer, where he could view it without anyone knowing. Jonathan continued to do this for several months until he was eventually caught. James was a curious kid who loved playing around with computers. He taught himself how to code by reading books and experimenting on his own. At the age of 13, he was already considered a computer prodigy and had won numerous awards for his skills. However, he was also bored easily and craved new challenges. When he learned about the Mars rover project, he became fascinated and wanted to learn more about it. But he didn't want to wait for the information to be released publicly. So he decided to steal it. When NASA realized that their computer systems had been infiltrated, they launched an investigation to find out what happened. They brought in the FBI and worked with them to trace back the IP address used to access their network. They found out that it was coming from Jonathan's house and confronted him with their evidence. Jonathan admitted to everything and explained why he did it. He said that he was just curious and wanted to see what kind of technology NASA was working on. He denied any malicious intent and claimed that he would never sell the data to anyone. Although Jonathan had confessed to his crime, NASA decided to press charges against him anyway. They wanted to make an example out of him so that other people would be deterred from doing the same thing. Jonathan's parents were shocked and horrified when they heard what their son had done. They had raised him to be an honest and ethical person, and they couldn't believe that he had stolen classified information from NASA. They hired a lawyer for him and hoped that he would be able to avoid jail time. In June 2002, Jonathan pleaded guilty to one count of unauthorized access to a computer system, which could have him locked up for a maximum of 6 years. The judge in the case, who was reportedly sympathetic to James's situation, sentenced him to 3 years probation, 20 hours of community service, and ordered him to pay $7,000 restitution to NASA for the cost of their investigation. James was also barred from using computers during his probation. Although Jonathan was not sent to jail, he still faced serious consequences for his actions. He was expelled from school and had to repeat the 9th grade when he returned. He was also put on probation and had to report regularly to an officer who monitored his activities. Jonathan was devastated by all of this, but he knew that he had brought it upon himself. He had made a mistake, and now he had to live with the consequences. After his probation ended in 2005, Jonathan tried to move on with his life. He eventually earned a degree in computer science from the University of Maryland and got a job as a software engineer. However, he always felt the weight of his past following him. He was constantly worried that someone from NASA or the government might come after him and take away his freedom. He also struggled to find meaningful work because he couldn't get a security clearance due to his criminal record. In 2008, Jonathan attempted to enlist in the U.S. Army to serve in Iraq or Afghanistan, believing that he could clear his name and serve his country. Unfortunately, his application was denied after a background check revealed his previous conviction. Jonathan was devastated and felt that he had nowhere else to turn. He was frustrated and angry about how his life had turned out and felt that he didn't have any options left. On May 18, 2008, Jonathan took his own life at the age of 23, before his death. He left a note for his family and friends saying that he was sorry for what he had done and that he didn't know how to change it. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. Jonathan's death was a tragedy and a loss of life. His family and friends were heartbroken and couldn't understand why he had taken his own life. Many people believed that Jonathan had been treated too harshly for his actions and that he had paid a heavy price for his curiosity. They argued that he had shown remorse and had tried to make amends, but no one gave him a second chance. Others, however, believed that Jonathan's actions were unforgivable and that he had brought his punishment upon himself. They argued that he had violated the trust of NASA and had put national security at risk, and that no amount of remorse could excuse that. The case of Jonathan James raises several important questions about justice, forgiveness, and the treatment of young offenders. Was Jonathan's sentence too harsh, or was it a necessary consequence of his actions? Should people be given a second chance after making mistakes, or should they be punished to the fullest extent of the law? Ultimately, these are difficult questions with no easy answers. Jonathan James was a brilliant young man with a promising future ahead of him. He had the potential to make great contributions to the world of computer science, but instead he chose to use his skills for personal gain. His actions had serious consequences, not only for himself, but also for the people around him. The death of Jonathan James is a tragic reminder of the importance of making responsible choices and the dangers of unchecked curiosity. It is also a call for compassion and understanding towards those who make mistakes. as well as a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance. Now let's talk about your opinion. Do you think Jonathan James got a fair trial? If you were the judge, how would you have sentenced him? And what do you think could have been done differently to prevent this tragedy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Also, if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more similar content. And lastly, as usual, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.